Let's go. Welcome to the morning show with ServiceNow Security. Please give it up for your host, Sean Convery. Morning, everybody.
I'm so happy to be here. We had a fantastic keynote this morning from John, but getting together as a ServiceNow security community is one of the things that I've been most looking forward to about Knowledge. And it's been a pretty big year for us, hasn't it, Piero?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I'm really happy we're doing this format because we got the one PowerPoint slide out of the way before we started, and no one's ever left a presentation and said those 135 slides were awesome.
That's true. No one's ever said that. Was anybody here for the afternoon show last year at Knowledge18? All right, smattering of hands. So we're going to try to take it up a notch this year.
Yeah. Well, one of the things this year, Sean, we've seen a ton of breaches. Right? I mean, many of you have maybe even affected by them, and you certainly know of some of the companies that were. But man, the names are getting weird. I mean, NotPetya. Gosh, that makes me want to cry.
Ooh, I see what you did there. When we wrote that originally, we thought it would get a much larger applause. I mean, come on, the wanna cry joke right out of the bat. Actually, what I was going to say about malware names is I'm thinking about them the same way I think about band names. All the good ones are taken. I mean, remember Slammer, My Doom, Code Red? Like, those were the days.
Yeah, well, speaking of names, the market that ServiceNow Security Operations plays in has actually been named by the analysts. Gartner is calling it Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response, and Forrester flipped some letters around, and they're calling it Security Automation and Orchestration. And maybe more interestingly, Gartner said that the market is about 1% penetrated and going to grow to 15% by the end of 2020. And Forrester made it one of its top 10 technologies to watch in 2018.
And that wasn't a list of top security trends. That was a list of top 10 technology trends overall. That was a list that included things like IoT. But what I'm most excited about is we've had scores of customers go live with our governance, risk, and compliance and security operations capabilities.
Yeah, and maybe more excitingly, a couple years ago, we had one session on security at K16, and this year we've got scores of customers that are leading sessions throughout the week.
And two of them are actually here today, right? So we've got a great show for you. We're going to be diving deep into security operations this morning. We're going to be talking about our two primary use cases, vulnerability response and security incident response. And since vulnerability response is the #1 way to reduce your attack surface area by addressing vulnerabilities and making it harder for the attacker to find something to gain a foothold, we thought we'd start there. And since we committed to this being a slide-free session, why don't we just go straight into a demo?
That makes a lot of sense. I should probably give the demo some context, right? Especially just in case there's some folks that have snuck in on the IT side or maybe the HR side. Maybe the HR people are still here. But to give some context on what we mean by vulnerability response is that what ServiceNow has done is we've partnered with some of the vulnerability scanning companies, such as Tenable, Rapid7, and Qualys, all of whom are actually here at the conference. And what they do is they scan networks for vulnerabilities, and where ServiceNow comes in is we can ingest that information and then help an organization respond or remediate or patch those vulnerabilities. So why don't we flip over to the demo?
Yeah, so what you're going to see Piero talk about is three primary things. First, the scale and magnitude of the problem. Second, how prioritization and automation can really help vulnerability response teams effectively respond to the issue. And third, we're going to talk about how to bring security and IT together to accelerate the remediation.
Yeah, did I make the demo big enough?
It's huge. I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, so I'll zoom out here for a second. This is the dashboard for vulnerability response, and something that a customer may typically see when they're using our offering. And I want to zoom in on this big number of a little over 72,000, because this is the amount of vulnerable items, so vulnerabilities and systems that we pulled in from one of our vulnerability scanning partners. And this is work that needs to get done by security and IT to go plug holes in the network. And this is not an easy task, Sean.
No, I mean, in fact, Piero and I had a debate as we were building the deck here, because we have customers in this room, several customers, that have an extra comma in the number of vulnerabilities that they have in their organization. So this is a much bigger problem than most people realize and are prepared to admit to inside organizations. We actually commissioned a study with the Ponemon Institute very recently, and they surveyed nearly 3,000 security professionals about their experiences with vulnerability response. And actually, to kind of bring this home a little bit, I'd actually like to talk to somebody in the audience about their experience. So if you work on a vulnerability response team as part of a security organization, would you please raise your hand? Right in front, fantastic. Would you mind standing up, please? Sure. And just, what's your name and where'd you fly in from?
Tom Backery. I flew in from Washington, D.C. area.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Tom. So I guess my first question for you is, what do you think the #1 thing in this study differentiated the people who were breached and the people who weren't breached? So basically, the folks who weren't breached rated themselves better at one thing in particular. And keep in mind, we're in the vulnerability response section of the keynote.
Yeah, I'm thinking patching vulnerabilities.
Absolutely right. Fantastic, Tom. I'm not done with you yet. Stay with me. So on your vulnerability response team, how many folks do you have working on the problem?
Well, it's kind of a shared responsibility with the operations team and the security operations team.
Just roughly.
Probably about a half a dozen.
About a half a dozen. So it turns out in the study, the average was about 8. But about 60% of folks were planning to hire more, on average 50% more. So 8 going to 12, right? So a lot of people trying to solve this problem.
You know, Sean, I got some bad news for you. You know, the ISACA came out with a study that said by the end of 2019, we're going to be 2 million people short to go fill those open security jobs. So good luck going in and adding more people to the staff.
Yeah, so Tom, I think there's a takeaway here. When your next salary renegotiation, I feel like you've got a conversation you can have with your manager. All right, so the third question I had for you is, you know, how are manual processes affecting how your team is able to get things done as you try to coordinate between security, IT, the app owner, compliance, the business owner? Is it a hassle or is it pretty streamlined?
It's pretty brutal. And I think that's a big part of the reason why we're so interested in ServiceNow and how it can help us to knit all of our tools together into a continuum that'll help to prevent all those manual steps. Right now, there's just so much lost human time in terms of trying to pull all the pieces together. It's a very fractured view of vulnerabilities and inventory even. It's big.
Oh, it's huge. And in fact, the study found that the average amount of wasted time per update in manual processes was 12 days. So 12 days spent trying to manually coordinate these things. It's just a huge challenge. Well, Tom, thanks so much. You've been a great sport. Tom, everybody. So Piero, how do we address some of the things that Tom and I were just talking about? This notion of prioritization, automation, addressing some of these manual tasks.
Yeah, so the first thing you got to get the 72,000 number down. You know, and what most organizations are going to do is they're going to use the CVSS score, or the severity of the vulnerability, to make that decision. If we could flip back over to the demo, we'll show you what we can do here. Within ServiceNow, we can not only take the CVSS score, which is the severity of the problem, we can also reach into the CMDB to understand what asset is actually affected by that vulnerability. And then we can also add a third factor. You know, is there an exploit in the wild? So is there a likelihood of that vulnerability actually being exploited? And so if I go here and reduce, I can reduce this down to a much more manageable number. All right, 229. I mean, that's still a lot of work, but that's a heck of a lot better than 72,000. And so if I dive into this 229, go right to the top, I see a vulnerability here of CVE 2017-143, and this one right at the top, I mean, risk score of 100. So not only do I have my 229 I need to go work on, I know exactly which one I need to go work on first.
This is terrific. So I was having dinner with a number of customers last night, and the stories I was hearing about the use of Excel spreadsheets to communicate vulnerability data between security and IT just blew me away. And actually, Tom, if you wouldn't mind just standing up one more time. Sure. You thought this was just going to be a one-time thing, didn't you?
Kind of did.
You thought you were off the hook. So how is the relationship between security and IT in your organization? And we'll keep your company name private. Don't
okay.
worry.
Well, at times it's very, very good, very strong. We really work hard to collaborate well together. But there's a constant tension between operations and keeping the lights on and concerns about how to be effective in the operations roles and the perceived impediments that security brings.
Sure, yeah, and in fact, we were talking about this last night. It seems like different accountability, sort of different metrics are a big factor here.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. And for us, we want to try and see a downward trend in terms of how long it takes to address vulnerabilities. And of course, the focus for the other team is more about making sure the user experience is top-notch and that they're able to deliver in a timely manner.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in this study, we saw that 70% of the respondents admitted that security and IT don't have the same view of systems and applications, and that's a huge part of the problem. And actually, 50% of folks said that things are falling through the cracks as security hands things off to IT. So it's a gigantic problem. Well, Tom, you've been a fantastic sport. I've got some chips here for you for later. Hopefully they're lucky. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom, everybody. So, Piero, talk to us about how to get to the remediation side of this. How do I take security and IT and actually bring it together in a way that allows both of them to solve the problem?
Well, the first thing is you start with having security and IT working in the same platform is the best place to start. So you're able to share data and pass tasks back and forth. So if we flip back over to the demo here, you'll see, I've got this one vulnerability here at the top. Now, this vulnerability with this risk score of 100 on that system is a pretty big deal, but it might not be the only system that has the vulnerability. So what I can do is quickly, automatically group these together. And what you'll see here is I've got 3 vulnerable items that are associated with that vulnerability, and the state is open. And so what I can do with this is I can take all those vulnerable items, and I'm going to have a workflow or a run book that's going to help me manage the remediation process. But because this is so critical, I'm going to initiate what I'm going to call the vulnerability crisis workflow. So this is when we get to one of those badly named vulnerabilities that, people are going to want to be updated on constantly.
And this comes with a red siren and a bat phone, right?
And like lights flashing everywhere. Everyone knows what's going on. So let's click the button. And you'll notice here, if you've used ServiceNow workflows, these should look really familiar. It's the same workflow engine as part of the platform. And the first thing you might notice, if I zoom in here even further, one part of the workflow's already happened. When we click that button, the first thing that happens is that a notification goes automatically to the people who need to understand that this vulnerability and this big bad vulnerability is a problem within the organization. We've also kicked off 2 tasks immediately. One, let's test the patch or the fix for that vulnerability, because no one's ever going to push a patch out without actually testing it first. And the other thing we've done is we've created an emergency change request. So when that patch testing is completed, we'll be able to get that patch pushed out as quickly as possible. Now, let's click through there. And all right, so I finished that, and I've gone requesting the patch to go to production. I'll click again, and you'll see here that we've now got the task in the appropriate team's hands to then go and push that patch out.
This is important. Sorry to interrupt, Piero, but as you integrate security tools with ServiceNow, a lot of folks are doing that today, and they're just opening what the security team calls a ticket with ServiceNow. But what you just saw here is much more nuanced, right? Because we actually understand that this is a crisis from a vulnerability standpoint. And so we want to reach an assignment group inside of the IT side of ServiceNow with a very tight SLA and the right level of expertise in the team to be able to address it.
Yeah, and there's a reason I'm showing the workflow side of this, is because this is the view the security team's going to have. They don't have to go and email somebody on the IT side or pick up the phone and call them. They can go right into into this particular incident and be able to understand the exact status at any point. So as we get the patch applied, the patch is applied. The next thing we'll do is we'll go notify all those same people again that we've actually patched the vulnerability and we're in good shape. But we'll take it one step further. And this is something that's going to be unique within ServiceNow, is that as part of this runbook or this workflow, when we've pushed the patch out, the thing we'll do after that is, through orchestration, trigger a rescan with the vulnerability scanner that found it in the first place. So let's say it's Tenable. So we automatically, through orchestration, ask Tenable to rescan the network to then confirm that the vulnerability is now gone, not just that a patch went out. And so as that gets finished, I can go back over to those vulnerable items, and those things that said open before are now closed. So there you go, Sean. Closed loop vulnerability patching, right? From prioritization all the way to confirming that it's gone.
What do you guys think?
Thank you.
This is so critical for a few reasons. First, we talked about how big a problem this was, bigger than most organizations are willing to admit. Second, we talked about prioritization and automation and how that can apply to how the security team integrates with IT. And then we talked about how security and IT come together in the remediation. And the reason why this is so critical is, as Tom and I were discussing at the beginning, the Ponemon Institute described that the #1 thing that separated those that were breached and those that weren't breached is the effectiveness of their vulnerability response program. In fact, those that weren't breached rated themselves 40% better at their vulnerability response program than those that did have a breach in the last 2 years. So that's been huge. So why don't we give it up for Piero for that fantastic demo? Great job.
Thank you.
But I got to tell you, Piero, that wasn't that hard.
Are you kidding? Dude, like there's, I don't know, 800 people in here, and I've been working on this thing for weeks, man.
And you did great. And I realize this is a questionable management technique right now, but you know, I bet we could get people in the audience to do this.
Wait a minute. I know I'm in Vegas, but did you say bet?
I did say bet. Yeah, in fact, what I think we could do, I could go out into the audience and find 2 people who've, let's make sure they've used ServiceNow at least, but they have never used security operations. And I think we can take them backstage with one of our experts at security operations, give them a little bit of training. They'll come out later in the keynote, and I think they can respond to real security threats using security operations in less than 5 minutes.
You ready? I'm in, man. I'm betting you.
All right, that's a black chip. Okay. All right, I'm in. $100. I'm in. But actually, let's sweeten the pot, because I was thinking I wanted to give you something because you did such a great demo, and I was thinking, what does Piero want? And you really love the Beatles, and so I got these 2 VIP tickets to the Beatles show Thursday. Awesome. Great seats. And I was going to give them to you, but
thanks so much.
Now I'm thinking that's not the right idea. Like, we've got all these customers in the room, so maybe what would be better is those of you that volunteer, and unfortunately I only have room for 2, that volunteer and can come out and successfully respond to a vulnerability at the end of the show, we'll get these 2 tickets to the Cirque du Soleil show on Thursday evening. So it work for you, Piero?
All right, so here, this is the bet, right? So you're going to go into the audience, you're going to find people who've used ServiceNow before but never used security operations, and they're going to find and remediate a threat in less than 5 minutes before the end of this keynote.
Less than 5 minutes.
All right, I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. So we need 2 volunteers, people who have used ServiceNow, have never used security operations, people who don't work for ServiceNow, don't know me, don't know Piero. We've got one person over here. Why don't you stand up, sir? If you could share your name and where you flew in from.
My name's Kyle. I flew in from Los Angeles.
Kyle from Los Angeles, and if you could just turn a little bit further. So, and you do not work for ServiceNow.
No, I do not.
Okay, it's true. We got a green badge there, and you and I have never met.
That's correct.
And you've used ServiceNow before.
Yeah.
But you've never used security operations.
That is correct.
You are our ideal candidate. Fantastic. Well, Kyle, why don't you actually walk over and talk smack to Piero while I find volunteer number 2. All right, who's the oh, I see somebody about halfway back there. Sir, if you wouldn't mind standing up and kind of sauntering over to the aisle. Saunter. That's an okay saunter. All right, what's your name and where'd you fly in from?
Sumit Kumar, I'm driving from Phoenix, Arizona.
It was really great to meet you. And you are also a customer. You don't work for ServiceNow?
No.
And you and I have never met?
Not before this.
Not before this, right? Well, we're going to become fast friends. And you have used ServiceNow?
Yes, I have.
But you've never used security operations?
I haven't even seen the interface.
Fantastic. All right, well, you are ideal as well. Why don't you walk with me, and we'll head up to the front. So Piero, I think we have our two candidates here.
I'm going to check that badge first.
You want to check the badge?
Yeah.
You don't trust me when I say they're green, right?
I'm not giving up $100 that easy, man.
Yeah. All right, fantastic.
All right.
So what do you think?
Attendee. They did a nice job with the badges this year. They made them different colors so you can tell. So yeah, let's do it. These guys check out.
Fantastic. So Janine Casella over here is one of our security operations experts, and she's going to be taking you backstage for a little bit of training. We'll get you access to the video of this keynote after the fact, so you'll miss a little bit of the show. But we'll see you back a little bit later. Please give it up for our volunteers.
And Sean, I don't really trust what's going on here, so I'm going to go back with them.
You're abandoning me?
Pretty much.
All right. Awesome. I say I'm a little bit nervous about that. Those are not plants. Those are actual customers who have never used this product. So we're going to put our money where our mouth is in terms of ease of use. So we talked about the big problem present in vulnerability response. We got a great demo from Piero. We got some volunteers. What I thought we'd do now is actually bring out a customer of vulnerability response and hear more about their journey. So I'd like you to welcome, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, the General Manager of Technology Services at Fonterra. Please welcome Cynthia Patterson. Cynthia. Thank you so much.
Kia ora, Sean.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
What does that mean?
Ah, that means hello in our native language in New Zealand.
All right. Kia ora. Can we try it?
Kia ora.
All right. Awesome.
We'll work on that.
So tell us a little bit about what Fonterra does. I'm sure there are people in the audience that aren't familiar with your organization.
Yeah, so Fonterra is a global dairy cooperative, and we are owned by 10,500 farmers and their families. And what makes us unique is the fact that we're not focused solely on profit, but we're actually focused on creating a sustainable dairy industry for future generations. And although you may never have heard of Fonterra, we produce 30% of the global dairy trade. And two fun facts about Fonterra: we invented spreadable butter, and our mozzarella cheese tops half the pizzas in China.
Wow.
Woo! I'm telling you.
Fantastic. Why don't you have a seat and we'll talk a little bit more. Now, Cynthia, one of the things I wanted to do is make sure you felt comfortable here. And you did fly all the way from Auckland.
Yes.
You're holding up terrifically well given the time change. But I wanted to make sure you felt refreshed and comfortable here on stage. So I actually brought a little something.
Well, John talked about great customer experience.
Yep. So I got some milk here for you from Fonterra. And it turns out you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get New Zealand milk through US Customs. It turns out they get really, really cranky. So we'll just pour a little bit for both of us here. And cheers.
Thank you very much. Great customer service.
I don't think I've ever had milk on stage, but
it's always the first. Exactly.
Yep. All right. We'll get cookies next time. So,
cool.
So Cynthia, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you were facing at Fonterra that led you to invest in security operations.
Yeah, so although we're a New Zealand-based company, we actually have 300 sites around the globe in 140 markets. And our security response and vulnerability management is split across global IS, global operations who actually run our manufacturing plants, and a couple of key vendors who manage critical parts of our infrastructure, including our Security Operations Center. So on the back of WannaCry, what we realized was that we didn't have a common view, pan-Fonterra or cross-Fonterra, of what those assets were and how they linked to business services so that we could make informed choices about what to patch and when to patch. And so we knew that we needed a tool that could really cope with the scale and complexity of our business.
Well, you were talking about a little bit of complexity earlier, just a moment ago. You have 10,500 owners.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Farming families, yes.
Fantastic. So the Ponemon Institute study that Tom and I were just describing a little bit earlier must really resonate for you.
Absolutely. We are certainly seeing the volume and speed of cyber attacks increase, particularly as we move towards more cloud-based applications. So it's really essential that we understand the threat that a particular vulnerability poses to each part of our business. And before we started down the SecOps journey, we were doing things like patch management very much in isolation. So we knew that to reduce the risk of being breached, we had to focus on end-to-end vulnerability management.
Got it, got it. And how are you thinking about measuring the impact of this new program?
So it is early days for us, but we're really focused on two key measures at the beginning. And the first one for us is, how can we reduce the time it takes to prioritize what to do first from a vulnerability management perspective? So we're looking to implement the risk-based calculators so we can better understand the benefit, impact, and risk and make the right choice. And the second key thing that we're focused on is reducing our security incident response time. So we're moving very much from manual-based spreadsheets and communication via emails, very ad hoc, to automating our processes and workflows so that the right tasks go to the right teams. And we just went live a few weeks ago with our security incident response. We're already, on the back of a phishing attack, seeing the benefits of this. And in fact, we've got a breakout tomorrow in the afternoon, and if anybody wants to hear more about our journey, we're presenting Fonterra and Deloitte together. So those are the two measurements for us right now.
Fantastic. So you're really integrating the vulnerability response and the security incident response together. So you're reducing your attack surface area, and then you're trying to address what remains in terms of actual attacks.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about the tie-in to governance, risk, and compliance, and risk overall? You know, obviously, vulnerability response programs have a strong tie from a compliance standpoint. How does that play out in an organization like Fonterra?
That's a great question, Sean. And it's interesting because we have a very mature risk framework, so we understand from a business point of view what those key risks are, but we've never really been able to actually tie in the security vulnerabilities and actually integrate that into a coherent sort of approach. So now with SecOps, we can look at our assets, we can link them to business services, and then the impact, again, from a business point of view, which is what we have to be focused on from an outcomes point of view.
You were talking a little bit about the security incident response earlier, and I know that's one you're a little bit further along on. Where do you see that evolving over time for what you're doing at Fonterra today? You talked about the phishing attack, for example, that you just recently remediated.
So our approach has been very much a hybrid agile approach. So we're just implementing the very basics so that we can get started quite quickly. And so how I see these tying in is as we identify new vulnerabilities, we can then focus on automating those workflows and having an integrated response.
Fantastic. Well, this has been really insightful. I think a lot of folks in the room here, I'm sure, are looking forward to attending your session a little later on during Knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, Cynthia Patterson with Fonterra.
Thank you very much, Morena.
So we've got to take a short break. You can just take a seat. We'll let you out in just a second. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about security incident response and see how that bet is going between Piero and I. You're watching The Morning Show with ServiceNow Security. We'll be right back. Bye.